Hey everybody, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to start where we left off and start working on some of the articles in the family section. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's do this. All right. So the Goldstein article, Where Are All the Mothers, was really talking about journalism as an example of a profession where a large amount of women come out of the education base, right? So there's by far more women coming out with degrees in journalism than men. However, they're seeing a lot of women leave the industry at a certain point or when they become mothers, and there's several reasons for that, and we'll get into that in just a second. But they were talking about a way in which to kind of modernize or to change the formatting of this particular industry to better equip mothers, to better equip women, and to get better representation of our general population in and through the lenses of journalism. And so they talked about how legacy news sources, family leave policies are really, really impractical, and they're just not helpful. And how these new digital news companies are really looking to kind of transform this space into a way that makes it flexible, where mothers can engage in those atmospheres better. And so some of the things that women were talking about were a lack of leave. They required a very toxic work-life balance that didn't accommodate being a parent as well. They were stationed in bigger cities that are more expensive and that require different kinds of transportation and different kinds of childcare, and that the childcare in and of itself isn't necessarily realistic for them due to the fact that their job isn't within that 8 to 5 realm all the time, depending on the stories they need to cover or what they're doing. And that leaves childcare as a really big obstacle when it comes to working women in journalism. They talked about the lack of promotion and the pay gaps for mothers. They talked about gender distribution in the industry and how it's not representative of the population that they serve. So again, talking about how few women stick with this career is really a sign that there's just not as much representation of women or news through the lens of women. And that can have a really damaging perspective on the world and on the stories that they cover or what stories they cover. And then they talked about a need for like flex time or the ability to work from home sometimes when, say, schools are out, or when they're pushing deadlines, but their childcare only goes till 6 o'clock or what have you, that they can also type from home in a very flex way, maybe. And so the interviews determines the solutions really were better paid maternity leave, fathers and non-birth partners having paid family leave as well, so that the entirety of the burden wasn't held on the women. Creating work from homes and flex policies, and having a better work-life balance for everyone. And that's not just going to benefit mothers, right? We need to have kind of the ability to come out of work. Work is supposed to be the thing that earns us, and I mean, not all work, but most work is the means to which we get to go do the leisurely activities that we have. It's the means to which we get to go do the things that we love. And in this, having a better work-life balance would benefit not just the women involved in the industry and the mothers involved in the industry specifically, but also it would have a better worker morale overall. And then Night, The Kids Are Okay was really just a large overview of research done comparing same-sex couple parents and the outcomes for the children to heteronormative couple parents to within the outcome. And it really, like, if you get nothing else from this article, same-sex partners families do just as well as straight partnered families. That's it, period. You could drop the mic there. That's kind of the main big huge takeaway. But they also talked about how emotionally, socially, and academically in all 3 categories, these kids were doing just as well, and in some cases better. And really what they were looking at was that it really boiled down to more parenting quality as opposed to the parenting structure. So it was less about who was married to whom, or if they had another partner or what have you. And it was more about the ways in which the parents were parenting the children that showed these outcome differentials. So if there was parenting that was very ineffective or harsh or things of that nature, then those kids emotionally, socially, and academically tended to fare less, no matter the identity markers of that parent that was doing those things. Some studies showed that kids were doing better in same-sex household due to parenting styles, openness, class recognition, and family stability. It takes a lot of proof, unfortunately, in our system for LGBTQ plus parents to adopt. They have to show a significant amount of already established wealth, already established economic stability, family stability. And so there was links to showing these things due to the fact that these are requirements that are different comparatively to someone who can biologically reproduce at any point. And so they did show some of those trends. They also showed that there was a lot more willingness within queer families to have a parenting structure that was built on inclusion, was built on making sure that they understood that the world came from multiple perspectives and that those perspectives were not wrong, that we all experience the world differently, and that queer parenting tended to be a lot more affirming, a lot more anti-oppressive. Methods when finding, they did have some issues with findings that showed that they were less effective parents, and those really were because they were making unequal comparisons. So like a single parent household compared to a dual heteronormative household, and the ability to create economic stability, family stability in that. And in and of itself, you see a difference in single parents versus the ability to have a better economic standing with a dual income family. And so having that distribution of a heteronormative couple versus a single queer parent doesn't necessarily show the whole picture. The two don't necessarily equate for specific reasons. And then there was distinct class differentials in some of the research where they found that same-sex partnerships were less effective parents. And that just boiled down to there was just not the same level of economic stability for queer families. And a lot of that boils down to how LGBTQ plus members are treated in workplaces as well, and the discrimination that comes out of those environments. They did notice that stigma and community impact, stigma of LGBTQ plus communities and the community bubble that they are surrounded in will impact well-being. So if they're in an area where their family is severely stigmatized, they're going to feel that impact too, even if they are not themselves the LGBTQ plus member. And they're going to feel the stress of the parents as well. And then but if they have a community that's very open, that is very affirming, and they surround themselves with also queer affirming people, then generally the well-being, it has a very positive impact on the well-being of the kid. And then again, legalizing same-sex marriages has really positive impacts for the well-being of young queer people, because there's hope that they're going to be able to achieve or want or can want the same things that everybody else their age would be looking at, right? Or be aiming for and aspiring for. The last article we did was talking about immigration policies and how they harm children. I don't think I need to go into great lengths of detail to help somebody understand that breaking apart families and family separation is traumatic for children. Like, if you can imagine at any point in your youth, your parents being completely separated from you, you being in a place where you didn't know, with a whole bunch of people you didn't know being not so nice to you and speaking in completely different languages than you. I think any of us can put ourselves in a position like that, or think about a position like that and say that would be terrifying as a kid, because as a kid, we lean on those familial social supports to provide safety, to understand the world around us. And so separating those things, it's completely understandable and absolutely valid that is and does cause lingering impacts on those kiddos. Not to mention that the conditions that those kids were in were not exactly fabulous either, and were ripe with a significant amount of abuse, a significant amount of harm that was being done to those kiddos. There is a lot of uncertainty that comes with any kind of immigrant childhood, or any kind of being from dual places, because there's a part of you that's in one place, or family that's in one place, and you don't, and then you have family here, and or depending on the citizenship status of you as you are in the country that you are currently in, and those of the relatives you have close to you, there's going to be a lot of worry or stress or fear of those people you care about getting separated from you, getting deported, you yourself getting deported, and fears of being persecuted for who you are and having absolutely zero say in all of this, right? The kids that come over here are coming over here fleeing things that most that advocate against them don't necessarily or couldn't understand, because we don't live in a country that typically, for your average heteronormative white person, would be as hostile as some of the places that these immigrants are coming from. Parents that are here and that have made it in and have their kids with them still feel a significant amount of stress, especially during the Trump era and even now, because these policies have consistently put them in a limbo status, have put them in a status where they don't really have space to call theirs. They don't have the ability to feel secure in the basic needs that we have we need as human beings. And that creates a significant amount of stress, both on the parents and the children who feel those things, right? And with that comes this distrust of social systems, right? That will lead to not seeking out help if harm has been done to you, not seeking medical attention when you maybe need it because you don't have the citizenship records that you would need, or you don't have the ability to have health insurance or what have you. Not maybe engaging with the education system for the kiddos, due to the fact that there are fears that possibly that will be the thing that gets you deported, is seeking any of these specific social systems. And just a quick reminder, immigration is completely and utterly tied to our economy. Our American economy cannot run without immigrants, without those who have work visas, those who come and do a lot of the manual labor and farming in the Southwest, that all the way up to the ranching and the keeping of the horses that we have here in Kentucky. There is a significant amount of immigrant population that work in these areas, and in areas that we as Americans don't necessarily want to do and or choose to do. And that in and of itself exploits the individuals that are in these fields, that are doing the things that we need to keep our economy running. But it also impacts the economy as a whole when we don't acknowledge and or discuss the fact that this is inherent to the system that we operate in, right? That these immigrants and these individuals who are coming from these places are absolutely vital to most industries that we have. So those are the articles for the family section. I'm going to get back on here in just a few minutes, and we're going to talk about the work chapter. I hope you enjoyed these readings. There's a couple more in there that are really, really good. Feel free to check them out. And if you have any questions, as always, please let me know.